So today we're going to start off with budgeting and flexible budgets, things like that, right? Budgeting is quite a significantly important area, okay? And let us say why it is. Give me 1 second. I just want to get some more information for you. 1 second. Let me open up the correct document. And I'm going to share my screen with you. Can you see my screen? Right? So, yeah, brilliant. Now, if you see this, you have few parts to this particular subject, right? And the five parts, I think you guys have completed quite a bit. You completed, I think, section A, right? So today I'm going to be looking at section C, right? The part C, financial planning and control, which is quite an important area throughout the life of a management accountant. And we're looking at budget preparation as well as flexible budgeting. I intend to complete this exercise today. Okay, so let us go into this area straight away. Now, 1 second, I will take you there. So we start off with budget preparation, okay? And let me tell you a little bit about budget preparation and how it is applicable in real life. Now, any company that you're working in operates with limited constraints, right? One of the first things being the money that they've got to spend. So in order to manage this money, you need to do budgeting and planning and then forecasting. If you take it to your own personal activities that you do, it's the same thing, right? You might get pocket money from your parents if you're lucky, and then you know the kind of income that you're going to get, and then you will also plan for the expenditure. You will budget for it. You will also forecast, yes, this is the kind of things that I'm planning on spending, right? And you will prioritize these items as well. So similarly, in a company, we will do exactly the same thing, right? So you will look at what are my income streams. There might be one, there might be multiple income streams that you will get money. And also you will look at what are the expenditure items that we've got. Okay, and then we will also, another aspect that we need to consider is the company is not static. The company might think of growing, right? So if they are growing, they will look at, well, I'm want to grow in this particular market, right? In order for me to grow in this particular market, that means I'm going to increase my sales. In order for me to increase my sales, what other aspects do I need to look into? Maybe I need to look into the personnel that I'll have to recruit, right? The extra inventory that I will need, okay? And if I'm in a manufacturing situation and I think, well, currently I'm operating 8 hours, right? I'm operating 8 hours, but I want to actually utilize my assets, that's the machinery in that factory, 24 hours, 7 days a week, right? So I will look at what are the assets that I will need, okay? And if I'm in a manufacturing situation and I think, well, currently I'm operating 8 hours, right? I'm operating 8 hours, but I want to actually utilize my assets, that's the machinery in that factory, 24 hours, 7 days a week, right? So I will look at what are the assets that I will need, okay? And if I'm in a manufacturing situation and I think, well, currently I'm operating 8 hours, but I want to actually utilize my assets, that's the machinery in that factory, 24 hours, 7 days a week, right? So I will look at what are the assets that I will need, okay? And if I'm in a manufacturing situation and I think, well, currently I'm operating 8 hours, but I want to actually utilize my assets, that's the machinery in that factory, 24 hours, 7 days a week, right? So I will look at what are the assets that I will need, okay? And if I'm in a manufacturing situation and I think, well, currently I'm operating 8 hours, but I want to actually utilize my assets, that's the machinery in that a lot more than what I'm utilizing now, and I want to sweat the asset. That means utilize it to the maximum. Maybe I will think of operating it 24/7, right? And in order to do that, a lot of things have to change. That means I need to find who is going to buy my inventory, who's going to buy my products, right? So in order to do that, I need to increase my sales. So you can see this whole thing is linked, isn't it? Right? So if I want to utilize my machinery, I will need to increase my manpower, right? If I increase my manpower and as well as increase the utilization of machinery, I'm going to get more product. If I get more product, that means I need to then look at increasing my sales, right? So then I need to increase my sales personnel, as well as you have to look at sales targets for this personnel, so that they'll be able to achieve and sell these products for us. Now that's one way of looking at it. We're looking at it from the production angle. Another way of looking at this is looking at it from more of the market, the market itself, right? We will look at the market and say, well, there is a lot of demand in the market for this particular product or service. Then we will look at, well, in order for us to go into this market, does it mean that we need to grow further? Because currently my resources or my people are not able to take this on, right? They're not able to take on this capacity of work. Therefore, I need to recruit more people. You see, so I'm going now from outside to inside. I'm looking at the marketing, the environment outside of the company, and then going inside to see whether I have sufficient resources to do this, right? Do you guys understand that, right? So now I have not been sharing my screen with you, which is not good. So you guys understand that concept? So first what I did was I looked at what I have currently in the organization, and then I'm looking at creating that demand or sales outside. The second aspect of it is where I'm looking at outside and saying, well, what is out there? Can I actually tap into the demand and service that demand? Okay. So what do you think is the most suitable? Any idea? Any idea? What do you think is the most suitable? There's no right or wrong answer, so you can say whatever, right? What do you think is the most suitable? Syed, what's your view?
I don't really get what you're asking.
Right. So do you understand, if we are creating a budget, okay? The budget, on what basis do I create? Yeah, that is one. I mean, there has to be some basis, right? So first thing is I can look at what do I have in currently, right? I will look at, I have machinery. If I'm a manufacturing company, I'm saying I have X amount of assets. Maybe I only use 8 hours of the assets.
All right.
Right? And I have the capacity to use it 24 hours. So one way of looking at it is saying, well, if I'm to use my assets 24 hours a day, of course I will have to work in a shift basis, then I need to increase my people, correct? Because the same people who are working for 8 hours, it's not possible to use them again for another few hours, right? It's not possible. So I'll have to recruit more people. Similarly, I will also be producing, because I have 24-hour operations going on. What is happening? My products are increasing, correct? So if my products increase, right, that's increasing, I need to sell them somewhere, isn't it? Right? So then I'm telling my sales guys, well, you need to create a market for this and sell these products. Okay? Is that clear? That is one way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it is to see what does the market want? What is the market demand? And then look at servicing that demand. Okay? Because let's look at the iPhones, right? There is a huge demand for iPhones, right? But then, who else came into this picture? When there was first it was only Apple, right?
I really can't hear you.
You can't hear me? What about Noor? Can you guys hear me?
Every now and then.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Noor, there's no breakup in voice. Or you can hear me? Yeah?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Right. Shweta, what about you? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Right. So, Syed,
I can.
Can you please check the microphone and your internet access, because the other two can hear me quite well. So Shweta, did you understand the concept I was driving?
Yeah.
Okay, so when the iPhones, there was a huge demand for iPhones, and Apple was the only one who was in the market, right? With these smartphones, they were dominating the market. But then who else came into the market?
Samsung.
Yes, exactly, right? So because Samsung saw this huge demand for this product, and they said, well, I could do this, right? I have the capability. So what did they do? They would have done a budgeting system before, and to see, well, what is it that I require for me to produce smartphones, correct? They would have had to do that, because they can't one morning wake up and say, well, tomorrow I'm gonna develop and manufacture smartphones for the world. It's not possible, because they're selling in millions and millions. So you need to have a full capacity, right? So this is the context of budgeting, because I know there's something I have to do. I want to plan in advance, right? And the budgeting is generally very much linked to what is happening in the environment and where the organization wants to go. Okay? And we will be talking about why do organizations prepare budgets, a framework for budgeting. That means there has to be a structure of some framework that will help us. What are the steps? What is a functional budget? What is a cash budget? What is a master's budget? What is capital expenditure and approaches to budgeting? So let me ask you the first question. Why do organizations prepare budgets? Noor, what do you think?
To get an idea about the expenses and the possible incomes.
Correct. Any other views, Shahid?
To forecast that, will they be able to go ahead with their planned objectives?
Correct. Yes. Let us see what the book says, right? Why do we prepare? Now, if you remember, right, if you guys have done an organization, what is their strategy, right? Have you guys heard of this strategic plans? The concept of strategic planning, have you heard? So organizations do have a
Yeah.
vision and a mission, correct? If you take any organization, right, they will have a vision and a mission. What is that? This means, why do organizations exist? Right? Why do organizations exist, and what are they there for? Right? So that's their vision and mission. Okay, and that is, they will have a strategic plan. That means a long-term plan is there in an organization. Now, to achieve this strategic plan, you will have other objectives, goals, right? And budget is another very good tool that is used in order to achieve these strategic plans, right? And a budget is generally, you get 1 year budget, 2-3 year budget, 5 year budgets as well, right? What it does is, really, it compels planning, right? It forces people in the organization to think just way beyond 1 day or 1 week, right? Because they have to think, get out of their operational activities and think, well, what are we going to do the next year, right? Somewhat like, why are you guys doing the sessions now, right? Why are you doing CIMA? There is a long-term plan for you, right? You're thinking, well, I'm doing my course, and I'm doing my uni, but my plan is also, I want to do these subjects, do these CIMA subjects for the future, for a certain reason, right? So you have a definite goal in where you want to go, right? It will help you to plan. Yeah? Now, communicate ideas and plans. Now, this again, if you start doing budgeting, it will again forces people to communicate ideas, plan, coordinate activities. Now, 1 second. Right. So what you have to remember, that finance alone cannot do this activity. Okay, finance alone cannot do this budgeting activity. Finance, they are the management accountants, actually they play the part of a facilitator, right? They are not the controllers and holders of budgets for the whole organization. So there will be so many others in the organization who will contribute to the budgets, right? Say, for example, the production area, they will say, well, based on the number of people we have currently, this is the maximum we can produce, right? Now the budget preparation, when we come to the budget preparation, we will see what will trigger the activities of a budget. Okay, we'll come to that. The budgeting also provides a framework for responsibility accounting, establishes a system and control, right? Because then it will give that good structure as to who is going to be accountable, and the framework around it as well, right? It also provides a means of performance evaluation, motivate employees to improve their performance, because the budgets are kind of, it gives you that target to achieve, right? There will be sales targets, there will be cost targets, right? So it will help you achieve, there is some kind of a guidance given. Okay, so what does the official terminology say, the CIMA terminology? Budgets may help in authorizing expenditure, communicating objectives and plans, controlling operations, coordinating activities, evaluating performance, planning and rewarding performance. often reward systems involve comparisons of actual with budgeted performance, right? Now, don't think that budgeting is really a fantastic thing. It has no issues related to it. There are certain issues as well. There are merits as well as demerits, but I think the merits are far greater than the demerits. But you should be aware, budget is not that silver bullet that will solve all your problems. Okay, it is certainly a tool that needs to be used, and in a very intelligent way. If you use it properly, it can give you a lot of advantages. Any questions so far? So, Noor, any questions?
No.
Sridhar, any questions from your side?
No, it's done fine.
Syed?
No, it's fine.
Okay, Chika? Okay, now I'm going to the next one. Budgets are different things to different people, right? Because it could be looked at as a yardstick, right? So it is basically a control mechanism. It could be also looked at as a target, right? Motivating people to achieve certain sales targets, right? And it would also be a forecasting tool where managers are told, you know, this is the kind of forecast that we are planning, right? This is what the kind of activities that we think are going to happen in the next 6 months to 12 months, and allow people to prepare for this. Okay, and also allocating certain resources. Resources means people, machines, money, right? These type of resources. Now, what is the framework of budgeting? Right? What is it? Now, they also talk about a budget committee. And the budget committee is, well, there would be the top guy who is an MD or a chairman, because it is top-down approach, right? We want people, the top management, to buy into this and really drive it, okay? And there will be the budget officer, or you will have the accountants working with this person, right? And every part of the organization should be represented on the committee. So what it's saying is every functional area such as sales, production, marketing, HR, finance, right, will be part of this budget committee, come together, right, and actually drive the activities of the budget committee. So what do these budget committees do? Right, coordinate and allocating of responsibilities for the preparation of budgets, right? So they will ensure each one of their areas provide the correct budget data on a timely manner, right? They will also issue a budget manual, as in what they're supposed to be doing, right? What can be included, what cannot be included, any governance around it. Of course, the timetable, right? When the budget, what happens when, and the time frame where it closes, right? And some information to assist in the preparation of the budget, communicating the final budget, and monitoring the budget process by comparing the actuals to the results, right? Actual to the budgeted results. So they are, as you can see, they are a mix of people from different parts of the organization, right? Different parts of the organization, and they will help you basically to bring the budgets together, right? Why do you think, Noor, we'll have something like this? Why do we have this? What do you think? Shreya, why do you think we have this
that
type
there's
of a budget committee?
mediator.
Sorry, you have to speak louder. Yes, Noor, you got to speak louder.
So that there's some sort of a mediator between. So that there's some sort of a mediator between the different departments.
Correct, correct. Yes. So there is a committee, right? So it's not just one person doing all the activity. There is a committee, and a committee is represented by everybody in the organization. Every functional area has a representative here, right? And that's why you have people from across the organization, right? Now, a budget period is a period which a budget is prepared and used, which may then be subdivided into control periods, right? So, because you will have a budget period and you will hear this word, okay, for budgets we are freezing this period, okay, and they will have these budget periods, okay. And responsibility of the budget. Now the sales manager will be responsible for the sales budget, purchasing for the material purchasing budget, and the production for the production cost budget. So each one of these heads will be responsible for their own areas. However, it doesn't mean they have to work in isolation. What happens if they work in isolation? Tell me. Shreya, what do you think? What do you think?
Then it would be just according to what the manager wants or something.
Mm-hmm.
His interests,
Yes.
without checking with other employees.
Right. Yes. And this means that the organization's goals are compromised. Correct? Organization has certain goals. That is compromised, and the manager's goals are the things that's there. So there is no goal congruence, we are calling it. There is no goal congruence, right? Then there is a problem, because organization wants something and you want something else if you're that manager. Okay, so when we bring things together in this case, it becomes your people are forced to think of the organization's goals, and they're forced to come together to coordinate with each other. Okay. What is a budget manual? What do you think a budget manual is? So tell this to me, Shreya, in your own words.
Just about how to make budgets, how to go about with it.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever done a budget?
Yeah, kind of.
Right. Tell me, give me the example. What have you done? Where have you done a budget?
Just method of costing for production.
Right. Did you do it as an activity for a company or as an example? How did you do it?
I did it for my exam.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But practically, have you ever done a budget for anything?
No.
Right.
Not yet.
Anyone out there who's done a budget practically for anything? Any one of you? So let's see. Chika, what about you? Have you done anything? Noor, what about you? Have you done anything?
No.
Yeah. Yes, Noor. Have you done anything?
No.
Okay, Syed.
I've had budgets set for me, like for things I want, but I've never actually made a budget for anything.
Right, okay. So let
budget for my
budget for what?
car, for my car.
Okay, okay. That's good. So does any one of you belong to a committee or a body like a sports body or anything like that? Syed, what about you?
No,
Right, Srida, what about you?
no.
No.
Okay, let us take the example. All of you guys are in the university, right? Let us do an example. Now, university, if you are looking at the university will have a budget for sure, okay? So, if I'm looking at the budget manual of the university, right? What do you think would be there, right? What do you think? You can first say, if you're looking at a company, whether it's university or any other company, you will have an organization chart, right? And you will have people clearly stating these are the people who hold the budgets. That means they have certain amount of money given to them and they can plan the budgets, right? They are the ones who plan the expenditure for that area, okay? So why do you think that this needs to be there in the budget manual? Why do you think? Srida, why do you think you need to have this organizational structure in the budget manual?
So that we don't leave out any of the departments.
Correct, because we are very clearly now look, because remember the budget manual is something for the organization, plus it is important that it is a form of a documentation available for new employees as well, right? Because imagine you just come into the organization. If you look at the budget manual, it'll clearly say, okay, this is my organization structure and these are the kind of people that hold the money for the expenditure, right? It is quite important that we find that out, yeah, so that everyone is very clear. Now they will say an outline of the principal budget and the relationship between them. So we are looking at the big picture here, right? Now this is where we want to go. Let's say if it's if it's a university, we're looking at currently my university has 1,000 people, 1,000 students. Now in the next year I'm thinking of going into opening up in Sharjah, right? And I'm expecting 2,000 students there. So immediate I have this big picture, right? It's important I have that, and with timelines, right? And then it will kind of link itself to other sub budgets, right? Administrative details of budget preparation, members and terms of reference of the budget committee, sequence in which the budgets are prepared, the timetable. So again, this is communication to people who are involved in the whole budgeting process as well as for new employees. It's clearly giving that guidance, right? What is the governance that they follow? And the last one, what are the procedural matters, right? Specimen forms, instructions for their completion, what are the account codes, right? The name of the budget officer to whom inquiries must be sent. So maybe we saw that the budget committee has representatives from different parts of the organization, right? So they would be the names that's given as the person to contact, okay? And most of it now is done automatically, right? It's electronic. So you can send a communication to this person saying, hey, listen, I don't understand this. How does it work? And the person, the budget officer, may contact you and help you in how to manage it, right? And as I said, the key thing here is to remember finance plays a facilitation role. Okay? Steps in preparation of the budget. Now, before we go there, any questions so far? Now, what is this thing in gray? Shahid, if you can tell me in your own words, the key points, the fast forward point which they have highlighted, what is this? What does it mean?
It might be a figure that the budget cannot go above this figure, or
Correct. What is the
something that
principal
limits
budget factor? Correct. So give me a limiting factor. Give me an example of a limiting factor.
production hours.
Correct. I have only 100 people, right? And they work 8 hours. Now that is a limiting factor. If I want something else completely, I want them to work 24 hours or, double the shift, then it has to be a different conversation, right? But as things stand now, what I have is 8 hours and 32 people, right? So there has, at times, the limiting factor would be the material used, the raw material used, or the sales, right? It could be different things. Now, identifying the principal budget factor limits the activities of an undertaking. Identification of the principal budget factor is often the starting point in the budgeting setting process, right? Now, this is where we start. Often, principal budget factor will be sales demand, but it could be production capacity or material supplies, right? Generally, they will say, okay, we will stick to sales. But at times, more often than not, there could be other factors as well, creating that limiting factor, okay? The order of budget preparation. So what do you think we start off when you're starting off? Let's say you guys are starting off a company, right? So tell me, what sort of company do you want to start off? Let's have a game. Shrita, what sort of a company that you want to start? Tell me.
A restaurant maybe.
Right. Okay. Good one. We're in a place we're full of restaurants, right? So obviously we'll look at restaurants. Now I want to have some conversation with you. Now a restaurant. What sort of a restaurant do you think, Shrita, that we're gonna have? What will you sell in this restaurant? Fast food. Right. And now you're setting up this restaurant, you're looking at fast food, right? And first thing is, now I want to create a budget for this fast food, right? What are the items that would we consider in creating this budget? What are the things that we have? I mean, first let us start by talking about the expenses in this fast food restaurant. What would be the expenses? Tell me.
Location, labor,
rent, yeah. So rent, yes. That's what you said. Location. So it's rental, then labor. What else?
Food expenses,
food,
raw material.
Yeah, material.
Advertisements.
Yeah. What else? Anything else?
electricity,
Yeah,
water.
utilities, right? So let us stop here. Now we have got quite a few things here, right? 6 items that we need to work with. These are our key expenses, right? So with these expenses, I'm looking at and saying, well, now I've just started this restaurant this year, and next year I'm looking at, the restaurant is making profit. Next year, I'm looking at what? Expanding this restaurant, correct? Because I'm doing well now, I want to expand it. So, expanding can be done in 2 ways. Now, let's say you open this restaurant, Sridhar, and how would you want to expand it? Do you want to expand the current location, or you want to look at a different location? What do you think?
A different location, maybe.
Yes, now you're looking at a different location, right? Now, the current location, you know your expenditure, right? You know your expenditure for last year. So, based on that, you might be looking at, you want to plan your expenditure for next year. And you also may think of some part of growth, isn't it? Because the restaurant is doing good, people are coming to you, and you may think of even the current one, you may think there might be a how much growth? 20% growth. I'm just saying 20% growth. When I say 20% growth, what is it? Growth in what? Growth in my?
In the sales.
Correct. So growth in your sales, right? When your sales grows by 20%, what else will grow? Now you have given me some expenses, right? Would the rent increase?
Maybe. Not really.
Not really, yeah. So I have rented the premises, that will not increase, yeah, generally. What about your
Yeah.
labor?
I would need more labor.
Yeah,
to-
so labor might increase a little bit more, right? If
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't increase labor, there has to be something else that I have to do. That means I'll have to automate some things, right? I need to look at how can I really keep my labor as is or lower and automate to make things efficient. Then what about our food expenses?
It could increase because there is more sales.
Correct. This is a direct expense, isn't it? My sales
Yeah.
increase, my food also has to increase, right?
Yep.
So there has
Yeah.
to be a direct expense, right? And you have some material as well. So depending on what it is, whether it's a direct expense or not, it will also increase, right? Utilities, what do you think? Will it increase?
No.
It may or may not, isn't it? Depending what sort
Yeah.
of, because my operation hours are not changing, right? My operation hours are going to be the same, right? Now
Yeah.
we know, look at the way we worked at it. We worked at it from our sales, right? So sales budget is what we're starting, yeah? We're looking, because that's the thing that's going to drive. Similarly, you told me you're going to open another restaurant. So again, how would we plan our restaurant expenditure? You know, there is a fixed expenditure that there, whether we like it or not, that's there. But there are certain other expenditures which is variable, correct? There's one fixed, one variable, and the variable ones will vary according to what? According to our sales, right? So that's the thing, that's the driver here, your sales. So now if you look at it, it makes sense, right? Now look at the order of budget preparation. You look at the sales budget, right? Production budget, material usage. So you can see in this case they're looking at like a manufacturing situation, right? Now, is this clear for you guys? Anyone who is not clear, I can explain it again. what is material usage budget and machine usage budget? Anybody?
How much material you're using and forecast of how much material and how much machine will be using.
Yes. Now, why is machine usage budget important? What does that give you?
Basically, the production will depend on
Gives
machine.
you an idea
Mm-hmm.
as to how many.
So we can say the machine is utilized 100 hours. Okay? But also we have to be careful because machine requires what? Maintenance, repairs and maintenance, right? So just because I have a machine does not mean I can use it 24/7. I have to allow for some idle time of the machine as well, correct? So I can't utilize. So in order to manage that, I need to have a very good planning on the machine as well. So say, okay, let's say I have 1,000 machines. I need to be able to say, I can't use 1,000 machines 24/7. How am I going to plan it? Based on that, my contribution to the production. If my machine is only available 30% of the time, right? So that means machine is not 70% of the time, 30% I need to allocate for repairs, maintenance, all that kind of thing, right? It will not be available. Look at an aircraft, right? Aircraft is not used 24/7, right? It needs time for the overhauls, the repairs, maintenance, things like that. You need to take it out. So in the same way, we need to plan. Okay. Now, what is this last one? In addition to several other budgets must be prepared in order to arrive at the budgeted statement of financial position. These are the capital budget, right, and working capital budget. What's the capital budget? What is a capital budget? So that is related to capital expenditure, right? What do you know about capital expenditure? Tell me. Any ideas? Syed, you mentioned about your car.
The purchase of fixed assets.
Yes, these are fixed assets, right? These are expensive items.
Expenditure for fixed assets.
Sorry? These are expensive items that has a life
Yeah,
more
that's what I
than
was
1
saying,
year.
expenditure for fixed assets.
Correct. Yes, right. It has a life more than 1 year, and you are going to be working with these assets for some time, and these assets are going to get depreciated. The depreciation should be taken in to your yearly budgets as well. Okay? You shouldn't forget it. You should take that into account. Working capital is the amounts that you need to operate the business. Okay, we'll come to that. And the cash budget. Functional budget. So what is a functional budget? This means each functional area of the department prepares a budget, right? The sales department, purchasing department, HR department, finance department. Each department needs to prepare a functional budget which comes together, right? And that is the holistic view of the budget, the overall budget, the company budget, right? You will prepare the separate budgets, but then you need to bring this whole thing together, right? Now, if you look at this one, preparing a material purchasing budget, right? It's giving an explanation, right? The number of materials used, Budgeted sales for 20x2 are 8,000 units of S and 6,000 of T. And they're giving you finished goods in inventory is so much. Right? And now how would you plan this? Prepare a material purchase budget for the year. Now I'm asking you the approach in planning. I'm not asking you for the answer. How would you plan this? How would you structure your answer? They have given you the current inventory of raw material, correct? And they've also given you the finished goods, correct? They've given all those. And then they have given you the usage of certain material as well. Now let's go into the answer. First you need to find out how much do you need to produce first to meet the sales demand. Then you look at, to meet the sales demand, it's 8,000 and 6,000. First you look at the number of products, and you need to also consider the inventory loss. And you take out the closing inventory which they have given here, right? Can you see? They hold closing inventory 600, right? For each of the products. So you take this out. Then you get the number of products you need to produce. From there, you already have finished goods. They're saying there is finished goods, correct? You have certain amount of finished goods, 1,500 and 300. So then you deduct those two, and finally you get the amount you actually need to manufacture. Once you get that, then things become quite easy. It's a case of saying how much is the usage now? What is the material usage? Okay. Is this question clear to you guys? How you prepare it? Is it clear? Syed?
Yeah, I understand.
You understand the approach, right? Because you start off with,
I understand the steps you need to take.
yes, the approach you need to understand. Okay, that's the most important thing, the approach, because then after that you can work out the numbers, right? I will put this up as well so that you can work on it slowly. Okay, now there's another question given. Again, they're saying this is the budgeted sales, budgeted usage, finished inventory, raw materials of inventory, right? And they're looking at expected hours per unit, expected hourly rate of labor, right? So what are they asking you to do? Fill in the blanks. What is the sales quantity? First you need to say. Then you will put the sales value. So in order to do the sales value, how will you work that out? Sales quantity multiply by the sale, right? And that will give you
the price.
Correct. And then it will give you the sales value, right? Production, the budgeted production, how much is required. Yeah. So again, it is a way of, a structured approach to going through the budgets. Now, first you start with the sales. It's fed with the material, okay, and also the labor. Yeah. Now let's go through. There's a question here. I will give you the question for you to work at home. Now, assessment point, you may get an assessment question which asks you to work out one budgeted figure from another. For example, you may be given the sales budget and asked to work out the production budget. Does that make sense? If they give the sales, can you work out the production budget? What do you think? What they will give you is to give these sales and say, well, I need to produce 2000 quantity, right? How much do you think the production would be? You can work out, right? Yeah. Okay. So that is kind of that logic is there. The business must produce enough to cover its sales volume and leave enough for closing inventory. So they will ask you the question, okay, I have a sales of 2000 plus I need a closing inventory of another 10% of the units. That means 2000 units plus a 10%, 2200 units. So you need to cater for 2200 units of production, right? That's what you have to do. Okay, that's clear? Are you guys clear? Noor?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Now cash budget is a little bit different. What it talks about is, well, I don't care about your production, all that kind of stuff, because that's a different story. Let that be. But I'm really interested in how much money you have and when are you going to get your money, right? This is what I'm interested in. So what they do is to kind of figure out at what points would you get the cash and at what points do you have to give out the cash, and when would you give out is at what point will you start making the payment, right? Now in this case, I know, Srida, we worked out for your restaurant, you said rental, okay? Maybe the rental we pay every 6 months. So then you know every 6 months there is a cash outflow, right? A cash outflow. Yeah. So for that cash outflow, you should have sufficient cash inflow, right? Then you will say labor. Maybe we pay labor after, we don't pay in advance, we pay at the end of the month, right? Food expenses, maybe we have credit terms with the suppliers and we pay them after 60 days, right? So by doing that, doing these cash budgets, what are we trying to get at? We are trying to get at how much money do we have if we carry out this way. These are the kind of principles that we're working with. That is paying my rent twice a year, then paying my labor end of the month, and also paying my key suppliers once, in 60 days. It's trying to figure out how much money do we have? Do we have sufficient money? If not, we have to do one or two things. What should we be doing? What do you think, Sreda? What should we be doing if we don't have sufficient money?
Add more capital
What sort of capital?
or work or adjust your budget to that money.
Elaborate a little bit more. I mean, tell me in practical terms. Now you've opened a restaurant. You find out I do not have sufficient money, okay, to make all my expenses and everything, because when I look at my sales, the money that we get, is maybe you have corporate clients. The corporate clients pay you once in three months, right? So because of that, you're having cash shortages. So how would you manage it?
Try maximum to adjust with the money you have, or try to increase your sales.
Right. Anyone else? Syed, what do you think? In this restaurant, I need more money. What do you think? What would you do?
We could take out a loan from the bank,
Sorry?
or I would try to reduce my operating cash cycle.
Uh-huh.
I would either take a loan from the bank
Yes.
as an influx of capital,
Mm-hmm.
or I would reduce my cash operating cycle
Yes. So because I just
by
mentioned...
reducing my credit terms.
Yes.
Say,
Yes, correct. Because I just said the corporate clients take 3 months to pay, right? So I'm saying, well, no, I'm going to give you 2 months. Look, I'm having difficulties here. By giving you 3 months, I need to take a loan, and generally loans do cost you money, correct? Because you have to pay interest. Yeah. So even if I increase sales,
Yes.
it's not going to help me, because if I'm still going on giving basically credit to these people, right? I'm giving 3-4 months credit. It's free of charge for them, right? There's no percentage interest attached to it, but it's going to make, I'm going to suffer because of that. Yeah. So you're right, you can take a loan side, but that's going to cost me quite a bit of money. But I'm trying to see what else that I can do, right? So there can be, you can have a company, a very profitable company, but also a company that has a negative cash flow. Is that possible? What do you think? Is that possible? Noor, what are your views? What are your views, Noor? Sorry? I can't hear you. Right, the question is, I have a company, it has a very profitable, in the profit and loss account, it is profitable. It's making a very nice profit, right? But in my cash flow statement, it's not looking good. Yes, exactly. They have a lot of credit sales, right? So because of that, this is not looking good, right? So preparing cash budgets is quite important to ascertain at what point you're gonna get your money, right? And also anything that you have to pay, right? For example, you have to pay rental, you have to buy certain equipment at a particular time. So you are looking at what point do I have to make this expenditure things, right? These expenses, at what point? So because of that, then you can see, well, am I able to manage this? Right? Do I need to take a loan, or do I need to negotiate with my suppliers or my creditors and my debtors? Do I need to basically have a negotiation session going on, because currently it doesn't look very good, right? So that is what cash budgets are. Okay, cash budgets really focus on how much cash do you have. And how do you know that? By actually bringing in the cash that you will receive at different point in time. So you will look at, okay, I'm going to sell $100,000 worth of items next month. However, I may not receive my 100,000 immediately. I may receive 20,000 the first month, 30,000 the next month, right? The rest of it in the last month. Okay, so that means what you will do is structure your income, right? Your cash coming in against 3 months. You will say, okay, 100,000 is broken up this way, right? Is that clear? Is that clear? Now, why do you think the cash budgets are useful for us? Why do you think? Srida, why do you think the cash budgets are useful for us? Why do we do these cash budgets?
So we can check how much would be our expenses and plan accordingly.
You see how much money is required, isn't it? How much actual money is
Yes.
required for you to manage for the next month or the month after. Yeah, that's what you're looking at, right? So it in this case, they're very clearly saying usefulness of cash budget is that they enable management to make forward planning decisions that may be needed, such as advising their bank of estimated overdraft requirements, or strengthening their credit control procedures. So what does that mean? I can tell my bank in advance, look bank, I need another 100,000 overdraft facility in the next for the next 3 months. After that, I'm sorted, right? So I can tell the bank this, or I could also look at strengthening my credit control procedure. That means instead of just allowing people to pay me when and if they want, I'm going to tell people, right, my customers, right now you have 20 days or 30 days to make payments. You have to abide by this rule, right? It is a must. Or I could also say, I need an advance before I start any work, right? That's another tactic to use, right? Now, in this case, we are saying, potential cash positions, right? We can have short-term surpluses. What do we do if we have short-term surpluses, right? What do we do if we have short-term shortfalls, right? Long-term surpluses, what do you do with that? We can go and invest in the long-term investments like fixed deposit, okay, or put it into expansions, right? So these are some positions that we can take depending on which one we are sitting at, right? Do we have a short-term surplus or a short-term shortfall? Is that clear for you? Clear? So this is again a question on cash budgets, right? What I will want you to do is, once I put the cash budgets questions, I want you to attempt these questions, right, and upload it to a Dropbox. Okay, are you able to do that? You guys have access to the Dropbox? Anyone who does not have access to the
Yes.
Dropbox, let me know. Put it in the chat. I will give you access. All right. So I'm going to leave all the question parts of it for you to try on your own. Okay. So that now you can really think about it and say, well, what should I be doing? I'll give you an example as well. Okay. There are quite a bit of questions. So let's go through. Now we go into master budget. Now, master budget, as it says, as the name says, it gives you a consolidation of all subsidiary budgets. So give me an example of a subsidiary budget, Syed. What is a subsidiary budget? What do you think?
The cash budget and the purchases budget.
Purchases budget is one,
I think
correct?
these are all subsidiary budgets.
Yes, sales budget, right? Production budget, HR budget, okay, the manpower budget. These are all subsidiary budget, but then
Yeah.
they all come together as a consolidated one, okay? So what is it? We look at basically the all-encompassing, the sales, cost of sales, gross profit, the running expenses. This can become we will do a budgeted profit and loss statement. Yeah, this will actually create that the big holistic view of the master budget. Okay, so that's what it comes to. Now, some hints. Budget questions are often accompanied by a large amount of sometimes confusing detail. Examiners love to confuse us, okay? This should not blind you to the fact that many figures can be entered very simply from the logic of the trading situation described, right? So you really don't have to do T accounts and stuff like that. Okay, you may be given a simple statement that a business pays rates at 1,500 a year, followed by a lot of details enabling you to calculate a prepayment at the beginning and end of the year. If you're preparing a budgeted income statement for the year, do not lose sight of the fact that the rates expenses can be 1,500 without any calculation at all. Does that make sense? So what it says is, it would say the company has a yearly rates expense of 1,500. Okay, and then they'll go on to tell you a story. Last year there was a prepayment for this year's rates expenses of $300, and then this year we have paid an amount of 5,000, which includes the rates expenses for next 2 years as well. Prepare a profit and loss statement, for example. All that, the last year, this year was all a lot of noise, isn't it? All what you have to look at, say, okay, what was the expense for this year? For what is the expense for a year? The rates expense, it's only 1,500. Is that clear now? Does that make sense to you? Anyone who doesn't understand, tell me, I will repeat it again. Okay. So now, because of the monetary amounts involved in capital expenditure, we know now what capex expenditure is. It is one of the principal subsidiary budgets. Okay. Now, steps in preparation of capital, right? Each area is basically saying what capital expenditure is required and for what, right? Step 1, an accountant or budget officer should be responsible for the capital expenditure budget, all right? And then you need to say what is the capital expenditure for, right? We should prepare the capital budget for medium and long term, right? Medium term as well as long term. We should also look at the financing aspect of it, right? Now they also look at the budget. The capital expenditure budget should take the account of the principal budget factor. Now let's do an example of this. All right, let's do an example. Syed, give me a capital expenditure budget item. What do you think?
A vehicle?
Give me yeah, okay, let us work on a vehicle, right?
Or a new computer system?
Sorry, let us work
Yeah.
on a vehicle. Fine. Okay, now let's say I need to buy, I'm a company, I'm in a restaurant business, right? Shrida said, let's be in the restaurant business, and I'm going to buy 5 vehicles, right? How did the 5 vehicles come into being? Why do you want to buy first? Why do you want to buy the 5 vehicles? For what?
Home delivery, transport of material.
Perfect. Yes. Right? We might think of having vehicles. So you need to look at why do you need this? It may be transportation, and you are looking at maybe food trucks, right? They want to have food trucks. So because of that, they are looking at vehicles, right? And how would we also need to look at how we're going to finance it. Financing means what? How am I going to pay for this? It might be I will take a lease from the company that is giving this vehicle to us, or I may also take a loan from the bank, right? Or I may have money, I'm a rich company, I will buy it outright. I have enough money. Yeah. So there are many ways that I can look at financing it, right? So you can see there has to be somebody responsible for it, right? It should be prepared for the budget period, but additional budget should be drawn up for both medium and long term. So we are looking at, okay, do I want it medium term or long term? Maybe it is medium term. I want it in the next, a year or so, right? And then we look at how we're going to finance it, right? Now, fifth one step is capital budget should take into account the principal budget factor. Now, in our case, what is our principal budget factor? What do you think? What do you think? It's our sales, isn't it? Right? We're trying to increase our sales, right? And that's why we're looking at getting these capital items into our budget, which will also help us improve our sales. Yeah. So here you get some examples, and you know that once we purchase an asset, it attracts depreciation. So what is depreciation? Anybody? Sreda, what is depreciation?
The reduction in value of the asset?
Correct, right? Every year, yes, over a period of time, there is a reduction in, and you will take it into your profit and loss account. Actual money is not exchanging, but you will show a expenditure in your profit and loss account, right? It's important so that you're taking it out from your profit and loss so as to show that, well, I need to keep this away. It's kind of an expenditure because I need to have this available when I go to purchase this asset again in 4 years time, right? So that's the story. Now, approaches to budgeting. How can we budget? We can do incremental budgeting. And there are several ways of approaching the budgeting. Incremental budgeting, zero-based budgeting, rolling budgets, and participative budgeting, right? Remember, 4 variants, right? Incremental budget means last year I got X amount, and for this year I'm just increasing it by 5% or 10%. Right? Does that make sense? So it's looking at the current year's results and adding a 10% or 15%. It's very easy to understand, easy to do it, right? However, disadvantages are it's not looking at the environmental factors, right? Maybe my environmental factors are not the same as last year. So you need to take that into consideration, right? Look at, if you look at the oil prices of last year and this year, right, there's a big difference. So if you're basing your budgets on last year's actuals to this year, right, it may not be accurate, correct? Because environmental factors have changed. Make sense? Now, zero-based budgeting is actually, it is the disadvantage is it's time consuming, right? Because we are going to the bottom, or I'm starting from scratch and building my budget. There are lots of advantages because it's looking at the current environment, right? I'm not saying, okay, last year I spent 100 dirhams, so therefore I'm going to increase it by 10% for next year. No, I'm looking at, well, I've utilized 100 dirhams. Really, do I need to spend it this year as well? Is it necessary? Should it be less? Or maybe I'm in a growth phase, therefore maybe not 100 dirhams, I'll spend 500 dirhams, right? So there has to be some logic against each of the spending. So for example, if I look at manpower, if I'm in a growth phase, I will say, well, definitely I can't look at how many people I recruited last year, but because this year I'm going into that growth phase, like Shrida mentioned, she's opening up a restaurant, another location. I need more people, right? So then I would say, well, I need to have more people there, right? So then I would say, well, there's going to be a lot of growth, right? And hence my budget is going to be from zero based. It can't be just a 5%, 10% increase. It will be on the number of people required. I will look at it actually how much is required and add that amount. Okay. What is rolling budget? I'm looking at I do a budget. I shouldn't say, right, this is it. This is cast in stone and I'm not going to change anything. That's not the attitude I will take here. I will say, well, depending on the environment, I will be regularly making changes to this budget and looking at the actuals. Again, it's time consuming. Large volume of work can be putting off for managers, right? Because you're constantly working with these budgets, right? But it is a great way of doing work because it gives you reality, right? You're looking at, I'm looking at a budget, but actually it gives some kind of, it's very close to reality because I have taken the environmental factors into consideration. Any questions here? Syed, Shrida, any questions? Now we will look at participative budget, which is we give the budget holders to participate and contribute. Of course, this is necessary nowadays, right? It is important that these people participate because otherwise, what's going to happen? They won't be responsible, right? If you don't participate, they won't be responsible for this input into the budget. So it's important that you get people to participate. So Syed, tell me, how will you get the production manager to participate in this budget? how would you get the production manager to participate?
You would ask for his budgeted production figures and what he estimates that they would be able to produce for the next accounting period.
Correct, yes. And he will be saying that his base figure will be actually based on the number of the sales figure, right? The sales manager has given. So the sales manager will say, well, I'm going to be, my targets is 100,000 items for next year, right? And then the production manager will say, right, in order for me to produce that 100,000, I need to have this amount of production items. This means I need to either increase people or increase machinery or both, right? So he will provide his input, right? Now, if I look at then the personnel, the HR personnel, they will have, if I based on that scenario, the HR personnel will also have an HR budget, right? That they will show an increase in personnel because of the increase in sale, right? Budget slack is the international overestimations of expenses or underestimation of revenues during a budget setting. Budget slack is I have overestimated or underestimated the revenue. Okay, so that ends our budgeting side of it, right? The first section, right? Now let us go through the second section, which is about flexible budgeting, right? As the name says, what do you think flexible budgeting is? Shweta? What do you think flexible budgeting is? What do you think?
We can flex it according to our production.
Yeah. So what we're saying is flexible budgeting is a really good tool in order for us to bring in reality into the budgeting process. Traditionally, what happens was they make the budgeting, right? And funnily enough, long back, what we used to do, it's the finance guys who kind of do the budgeting, all the inputs, everything the finance guys will do, and they will not kind of get contribution from the other parties, right? So it was, budgeting is not something that people liked at all. But now we are requesting people to contribute to this budgeting process. All the non-financial people, all the functional heads, right? We are expecting them to contribute. And also what we're saying is we will flex or change our budgets, that is contracting or expanding our budget depending on the environmental conditions. Now, what do I mean by environmental conditions? Give me an example. What do I mean by environmental changes? What? Sorry?
The business environment?
Correct, business environment. So in our case, where we are, I know all of you guys are based in Dubai. What are some of the big changes that happened here in the environment? What do you think?
The recession period and the boom periods.
Property, right? So one of the things is your property, yeah? Real estate, right? Increases, decreases, and who would have got impacted here? Who do you think would have got impacted here?
The businesses,
Right, like who? Give me examples.
real estate business, construction industry.
Exactly, you're spot on. So I'm looking at environmental factors. I'm sitting as a let's say a real estate company. I'm a finance manager of a real estate company. So if I'm in 2007, let's say, right, where it was fantastic, right? The environment was fantastic. I'm growing like crazy. Now, I set my budget, very a strict budget that doesn't move. Now, if I took it to 2008 was also quite good, right? I took it to 2009, the same thing, things. No, it doesn't, because things have changed. I need to incorporate it, otherwise it doesn't link to what is reality. Okay, so you gave some very good examples, right? Now they talk about a fixed budget is a budget which is set for single activity level, a flexible which recognizes different cost behavior patterns and is designed to change as the volume of activity changes, right? Is exactly what we mentioned. Fixed budget is a budget set prior to the control period and should not subsequently change in response to changes in activity. Now, if I have this kind of fixed budget, it's going to cause me a lot of problem. What are the problems that it will cause me? Tell me, what would it cause me? What do you think? Give me example of one issue. Now you mentioned, Srida, I think real estate, right? The property market. Now the property market was booming. Now it's in 2009-10, it went through a really bad time. Now if I didn't flex my budget, what would have happened? What problems would have caused?
People wouldn't purchase the properties.
Anyone else? You would have gone and you would have recruited more and more people, right? You would have also looked at, you wouldn't have looked at reducing your cost, isn't it? Right? Suddenly, if you don't take those into consideration, you planning, you need to think of, well, I'm going to reduce my cost because I know people are not going to buy real estate, which in turn will impact my sales, right? So I need to contract my costs. Yeah, that's what I need to do, right? So preparation of flexible budget. First step in preparation, what are the cost behavior patterns, right? Decline whether costs are fixed, variable or semi-variable. Why is this important for me? What do you think? Why do you think this is important for me? If I look at fixed and variable, why is it important for me?
To identify the target customers.
So we need to find out now. Suddenly, if you're doing your fixed the budgeting, right? I know I can't flex this item because it's a fixed item. Yeah. Now rental is a fixed item. I can't flex it. But if it's variable one, I know I can flex it depending on the volume of sales, right? So that is something that I can work with. And even the fixed ones, we need to be careful and look at, well, are there any possibilities that we can reduce this cost in a way that it could become a flexible cost, a variable cost, right? Is there a possibility, for example, that instead of having a permanent office, I have a virtual office, right? Because now I'm suddenly seeing that this is causing me a lot of problems, right? So those are things that you need to consider. Now, these are questions. Now, in certain cases, we've got, right, this cost of factory power, right? The question is, they have given you number of units and the cost. In this, you have got fixed and variable. You don't know what is fixed and what is variable, right? Now you have to work out what is the factory power, cost of factory power, which will be incurred, right, in this particular year, 2005, for 10,200 units. What you're doing is simply, you will take the highest and the lowest output, take the cost, divide it by 2, okay, and then you will get the output, the cost per unit, right? That's what you will get, and then you will just simply multiply it by this figure, 10,200. Okay, so I will give you this example as well as part of your slide deck, right? If this question is given, a question like this, right, where they give you for number of years, this is the number of the output and this is the cost, you will simply take the highest and lowest, find out the cost per unit, and then multiply by the 10,200 for the number of units, right? Now, this is an example of preparing a flexible budget, right? Then they will give the activity levels, and then they will ask you, right, for X amount of activity, how will it work? Now, this is quite a lengthy sum. I will give you the question and the answer for this in order for you to understand how it will work, right? However, in your sums given at the exam, it won't be this lengthy, right? It will not be this lengthy. Okay, this is just for understanding purposes. Now let us go here, the question itself, right? They're asking, prepare a budget for 2006 for direct labor cost and overhead expenses of a production department fixed at the activity levels of 80%, 90% and 100%. They also give direct labor hourly rate is 375. Right, 100% activity represent 60,000 direct labor hours. So then, what is 80%? How many labor hours would it be? What do you think? Said, what do you think? If it's 80% level, how much would it be? How many direct labor hours would it be? Anyone? Do you know how to calculate that? So if 100% represents 60,000 direct labor hours, what is 80%?
48.
How do you do that? 60,000?
48,000.
How did you calculate that side? 60,000 multiplied by? What?
50%.
Correct. Yeah. Okay. So then they have also given the direct labor hour rate, consumable supplies per direct labor hour, and canteen and other welfare services. They're all linked to the direct labor hours. Look at that. So all linked to direct labor hours. Yeah. So they have given you the fixed cost. So irrespective of which 80, 90, 100%, this is your fixed cost. Now they're asking you calculate the budget cost allowance for 2006, assuming 57,000 direct labor hours are worked. Right? 57,000. Right? The first one is you need to prepare 80, 90, 100%. So for 80, 90 and 100%, you just simply worked the number of hours, right? The cost. So how did they arrive at this side, the 225? What do you think? What do you think? How did they arrive at that 225? Just if you can work it out for me. So we will take 60,000 multiplied by what? For 100% activity, what would we do? 60,000 multiplied by? Correct, 3.75. Okay. So similarly, you will do for these two as well, 54 and 48. And then you will do the similar thing for indirect labor hours, consumable supplies, canteen. Because they have given you, for example, here, indirect labor 0.75. So all what you have to take is 0.75 multiplied by 48, 54,000 and 60,000 to arrive at these figures. Is that clear? Right? Then you have the fixed costs component, and then you arrive at the budgeted costs, okay, for each. Now they have worked using the high-low method. That's the method that I showed you as an example, high-low method. Okay, the variable cost per hour they have worked out. Okay, any other questions on this? Shweta, any questions?
No, it's going fine.
It's fine. Now, flexible budgets for control. So what it means is you control. You have to basically, why do we do budgets? As a controlling mechanism, right? And comparing flexible budget with the actual results and seeing the differences. You will see the variances. It's called a variance. All what you're trying to do is compare the actual against the budget, and then you compare the variance. Is it adverse or favorable? In this case, you will see it was the sales is favorable, right? Of course, this direct material, all these things are adverse. Why is it adverse? Why do you think it's adverse? Because there is a proportionate increase.
Was more than?
Exactly. Your sales has increased. But I'm a bit worried about the depreciation. Depreciation should have been, a fixed cost, isn't it? So I'm not sure why that is adverse, right? Rent and rates is adverse. My thinking is they have not budgeted this properly, right? It is not necessary that it should increase with your sales. However, your overall figure, profitability, is a favorable figure. Okay. Now, in this case, a correct approach to control would be identify what is fixed and what is variable, and produce the flexible budget based on the activity level, the actual activity level. Does that make sense? So what we're saying is, identify the fixed and variable costs. Produce a flexible budget based on the actual activity level. Right. My actual activity level is 50,000 units. Why is it important for me to identify the fixed and variable aspects of it now? Can you tell me? Why is it important? Why do you think is important? Shreda, why do you think?
Pardon, ma'am, what's the question?
The question is, my activity level is 50,000, right? If my activity level is 50,000 actual, why do I need to look at what is the fixed and variable cost in this when I'm comparing it with my budget? Why do I need to do that?
To check for mistakes or something.
Okay. And what you have to do is actually the reason that you're going to be doing this is because 50,000 is your actual. Maybe your, in your variable cost, you're going to look at, well, there is an increase against the budgets, right? Maybe because you budgeted only for 40,000, correct? But actually you've done 50,000. So in effect, it may not be, the variance is mainly due to the increase in volume of sales or increase in volume of production, correct? Does that make sense? Yeah? So what we're saying is we need to identify that this particular activity, right, which is increasing of sales, has created a variance because there's actually, we have produced more. Yeah, we've produced more. That's why the variance. Now the fixed is fixed. Whether we produce 50,000 or 40,000, it's fixed. There should not be any variances there. Okay. Interpretation of the control. Yeah, that's. Let us. Basically, you have to interpret whether, what is the reasoning behind the adverse and favorable variances, right? That is, here you have the full variance analysis given. You're saying fixed budgeted profit is 1,500. So profit, is 1,900. And how did you go about it? Okay. What are the variances? Okay. So they have given this analysis to say how did you arrive at that, right? Say for example, if you look at this, right, budgeted sales revenue increased by 10,000. Budgeted variable cost also increased, right? So these are all direct labor, direct costs. Okay. Budgeted fixed cost is unchanged, obviously. Budgeted profit increased by 3,500. So the sales, this is 3,500 favorable, correct? We've got a favorable, and then we have here favorable as well as adverse variances. And a total expenditure variance, we have got a favorable, right? And sometimes, even though our variable cost, right, our variable component there might be a favorable, like in this case, we've got favorable. Even though we have an increase in the number of units produced, how can that happen? So even though we have an increase in number of units produced, we have a favorable variance in material cost. How can that happen? Syed, any views? Shraddha, any views from you? How can that happen? It can happen really by you getting a better price. Okay? You've got a really good price from the vendor, right, for this item, plus you have used the efficiency of utilization of the material is great. You have used it efficiently and you have saved, right? Because of that, overall you might get a favorable variance. Is that clear? Shraddha, is that clear? Syed, guys, is that clear? I need to find out whether you understand this concept.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, good. Because this can be a little bit confusing if you don't understand, right? So there are some questions again related to it, which I will give you. So there is a lot of questions in this area. I'm not going to go through the questions in class, right? But I will give it to you as an example that for you to work it out at home, right? So what I would like to do is provide you with all these examples. These questions will be available to you either late tonight. You can start doing them tomorrow morning, right? It will be available to you in your Dropbox. Okay, so please go there and access your questions and do your questions, right? And we will, if there are any questions for me regarding this area, please do feel free to chat about it in your Facebook page. Put up the question, ask me, I don't understand this section, can you explain? And we will try to explain. Okay, so have you guys done flexible budgeting at the uni before? Well,
Yes, we have done this.
right.
I have done this at least.
Okay, Syed has done. Shraddha, have you done it?
Yeah.
Noor?
Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. So this is not something brand new for you. Okay, you should be able to comprehend it quite well. Are there any questions here that you think, well, you know what, I don't understand that part very well? Because since you guys have done this area before, I may not give you a lot of questions, right, from this textbook. But is there anything that you think that you need to brush up on? Then I will focus on that area and give you some more notes as well. Noor, I'll start with you. Is there anything that you want me to focus on?
No, not specifically.
Okay, good, right? So nothing there. Shraddha, anything from you?
I think it's going okay.
Fine. Syed? Anything from you? No?
I think this is appropriate.
Fine. Okay, brilliant. So we've covered that budgeting and flexible budgeting for today. As I said, the questions will be available tomorrow morning in your Dropbox for you to access and do the questions. Okay. We will close for tonight and see you guys soon.